At my son's wedding, I walked toward my chair, tired but proud. Just as I lowered myself, his fiancée yanked it away. I crashed to the floor while the crowd gasped. I looked up at my son, waiting for him to help, but instead, he only said, "Dad, maybe you should rest in the lounge." That cut deeper than the fall itself. What they didn't know was that I had already gathered proof of a plan they thought I was too old to see. And when I finally revealed it, no one in that room would look at me the same again. Stay with me until the end of this story, and comment the city you're watching from. I want to see how far my voice can reach. The hotel lobby smelled like citrus polish and old money. A doorman with a practiced smile held the door open for me, but his eyes skimmed past like I was just another old man who'd taken a wrong turn on his way to the pharmacy. I stepped inside, clutching the invitation envelope Delmar had mailed. No handwritten note, just the printed card, formal and cold, the kind you send to colleagues, not to your father. The receptionist was young, maybe 22. Her nails matched the pink blush of the floral centerpieces I could see through the glass doors leading to the reception hall. She glanced at her list, then back at me with a frown. "I'm sorry. Your name isn't here," she said. "Try Seibert." "Harlan Seibert," I replied, keeping my voice steady. She looked again. "No, sir. Are you sure you were invited?" It stung, but I didn't show it. "I believe so." From behind me, the security guard stepped in. "Sir, do you have your invitation?" I handed him the envelope. He squinted at it like it might be fake. "Just a moment," he said, stepping away to make a call. Other guests passed by in polished shoes and laughter. A woman in a glittery dress glanced at me as if I were standing in the wrong place, blocking something. I looked down at my suit. It was a little older than the decade, but Evelyn always liked how it looked on me. She used to say gray made me look dignified. Finally, a staff member from the rehearsal dinner, the bartender, I think, recognized me. "Hey, weren't you here last night?" "Yes," I said. He turned to the security guard. "He's the groom's father." That word, father, hung in the air like something fragile. The guard stepped aside. The receptionist offered a tight smile. "Apologies for the confusion, sir." I nodded politely, though inside, something quiet began to sink. The reception hall glittered. Chandeliers sparkled above carefully arranged tables, each with white linen, gold-plated silverware, and handwritten name cards. I walked slowly, scanning the tables. There was a table for the bride's family, for her college friends, for co-workers, for cousins. Finally, near the back, next to a hallway marked restrooms maintenance only, I saw it. Harlan Seibert. The table was small, round, meant for four but pushed up against the wall. The scent of disinfectant was sharp, and every time someone walked by to use the restroom, they brushed against my chair. Seated around me were two distant cousins from out of state, Delmar's mother's side, whom I hadn't seen since Evelyn's funeral, and a hotel employee's uncle who apparently used to know the family from way back. I sat down slowly. From across the room, I heard someone whisper, "That's Delmar's father?" The voice wasn't mocking, just surprised, as if I didn't belong. I smoothed the napkin across my lap and said nothing. The music began, a string quartet, classical, lovely. I sipped water from the tall glass in front of me, watching the flower arrangements catch the light. Evelyn would have loved the tulips, pale pink and cream. She always said weddings were about hope, about the courage to start fresh. I glanced at the head table. Delmar sat tall, confident in his tuxedo, Lorne beside him, laughing. They didn't look my way. A waiter approached. "Chicken or vegetarian, sir?" I had noted steak on my RSVP. "I have a dietary—" He cut me off with a practiced smile. "We have chicken or vegetarian." I hesitated. "Vegetarian, then?" He nodded and moved on. The MC stepped onto the small stage, microphone in hand. "Let's take a moment to thank the families that made today possible. To the Hanson family, Weldon and Grace, who helped plan every detail. What a wonderful celebration." Applause erupted. The spotlight fell on the bride's parents. They stood, beaming. There was no mention of me. The man next to me leaned over. "Are you part of the groom's side?" I smiled. "Yes, I'm his father." His eyebrows lifted. "Oh." Then he turned away, pretending to look at the menu. After a while, I excused myself and made my way toward the restroom. I needed a moment away from the noise. When I returned, the chair I had been sitting on was gone. I stood still, unsure. The other guests at the table didn't look up. The staff bustled past. I approached a server. "Excuse me, my chair is missing." She shrugged. "Maybe someone moved it?" I looked around, then went into a nearby service closet and found a folding chair meant for staff. I brought it back and sat down, quietly. As I did, a child, maybe 6 or 7, pointed. "Why's that old man eating alone?" she asked her mother. I felt the words like a needle under the skin. A staff member brushed past me, whispering under her breath to another. I caught only a few words. Delmar told them, family tension, not a priority. So it wasn't a mistake, it was a message. I looked down at my plate, now cleared by the staff, and folded my napkin. My son was on stage, toasting his new life. He never looked my way. So this is the seat my son believes I deserve. The applause still echoed faintly as I sat motionless near the restroom, my hands folded neatly over my lap. Delmar stood proudly at the head table, raising his glass high and beaming out at the sea of faces. "To everyone who made this day possible," he declared. "You've all helped us get here, and Lauren and I are forever grateful." They clinked glasses, laughter, more applause, but no mention of me, again. I took a slow sip from my water glass. It had gone tepid, the slice of lemon sinking like a lifeboat with a hole in it. The bubbles were long gone. I stared through the rim, watching my son's silhouette blur in the distorted curve of the glass. I told myself it was a slip. Maybe he was nervous. Maybe he forgot. Again. Then I caught Lauren's eyes. Across the room. In the bright gleam of the chandelier's reflection, she looked directly at me. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. There was something sharp and smug behind her lashes, as if she'd just confirmed a bet she'd placed hours ago. I glanced away, pretending to straighten my silverware. Even silence can sound loud when you feel like an afterthought. A sudden tap on my shoulder broke the spiral. "Would you like a photo by the cake?" a soft voice asked. It was a young woman I barely recognized. Justine. I thought she was called Lauren's cousin? Niece? Her cheeks were flushed from wine or nerves. Or both. I stood carefully, nodding. "That would be nice. Thank you." We walked slowly toward the ornate dessert table, where a towering white confection stood adorned with sugared roses. My knees protested every step, but I kept my smile fixed. She took one photo, then another. "You look very dignified, Mr. Seibert," she said quickly, then vanished into the crowd before I could thank her. I turned to head back to my table, my corner by the restroom, and noticed something odd. My chair was pushed slightly out, not the way I'd left it, just enough to throw off the angle. Still, I assumed nothing. People brushed past constantly. It was a tight space, so I moved into position and reached down to sit, and the chair vanished. There was a flash of movement, too fast to process, and the next thing I knew, I was falling. My left hand caught the edge of the table, but not enough. The dull thud of my hip meeting carpeted floor rang louder in my ears than any music playing above. A gasp rippled from the nearby tables. Lauren's voice pierced the moment. "Oh no, I didn't see you backing up. Let me help." She extended a hand, her lips shaped in a perfect O of concern. I looked up at her. Her hand hovered inches from mine, but her eyes, those eyes, weren't sorry. They were triumphant. A waiter appeared out of nowhere, grabbing my arm. Delmar materialized a second later, brows furrowed. "Dad, maybe you should rest a little. There's a lounge down the hall with couches. It might be more comfortable." He never asked if I was okay. Not once. I pulled myself upright, brushing down my jacket sleeve. "I'd rather not miss the rest of the evening," I replied, my voice even. "I'm fine." A few guests averted their gaze. Others whispered. One woman nearby tilted her head and asked someone under her breath, "Isn't that the groom's father?" Delmar didn't correct her, didn't acknowledge me further, just turned back to Lauren, placing a gentle hand on her lower back, protective, loving, for her. I caught a glimpse of Weldon Maynor, the bride's father, watching me from across the room. He raised his wine glass with the subtlest smirk before tipping it to his lips. We'd never been introduced. I made my way back to the little table with the humming bathroom door beside it. The chair, of course, had been returned, as if nothing had happened, as if I'd imagined the fall. I sat carefully, flexing my fingers. They trembled from the impact. I thought of Evelyn. What would she say now? Probably something like, "Let the children have their drama. We've earned our peace." But she wasn't here, and the peace had long since evaporated. A few minutes passed. Dessert arrived, a sliver of cheesecake with some kind of berry glaze. I hadn't asked for it. As I picked up my fork, Lorne walked past my table again, not looking at me at first, until she slowed. She leaned in just enough so that only I could hear her words. Accidents happen more often when people don't know their place. Mr. Seibert. Then she was gone. The fork paused halfway to my mouth. I didn't speak, didn't look up, just sat in that stillness. A folded napkin lay beside my plate. I picked it up, flattened it, then quietly tucked it into the inside pocket of my coat. My handwriting stared back up at me, words I'd scribbled earlier. In a moment of fading clarity, Lowell Desmarais. I hadn't said that name aloud in years, but something told me I'd be needing it soon. The hallway just outside the lounge was quiet, save for the soft hum of fluorescent lighting. I leaned against the wall, one hand in my coat pocket, fingers brushing over the rough folds of the napkin. The ink had bled slightly. My handwriting wasn't as steady as it once was, but the name was still there. Lowell Desmarais. I hadn't thought of him in over a decade, maybe longer. Funny how a name could feel like a knock on a long-sealed door. Lowell and I used to be closer than brothers, partners in a woodworking shop we built from nothing. We had clients from all over Illinois, hand-carved cabinets, custom bookshelves, the kind of craftsmanship you don't find much anymore. Then came Delmar's business degree, the market crash, and Lowell's sudden shift toward fast expansion. I wanted to keep it small. He didn't. Words were exchanged, harsh ones. We sold the shop, went our separate ways, and yet, here I was, on the day my only son got married and made me feel like a ghost, thinking about the one man who once stood beside me when no one else did. I refolded the napkin and slipped it into the inner pocket of my coat. I needed air. I made my way down a side corridor that led to the hotel's back terrace. The ballroom music softened behind me, replaced by the distant sounds of traffic and the occasional gust of wind slipping through the gap in the door. The balcony overlooked the valet area, rows of gleaming cars idling under amber lights. I stood still, letting the night air cool the heat that had settled in my chest. So much effort had gone into today, so much silence pressed between me and Delmar. He'd once been a boy who looked at me like I hung the moon. Now, he looked right through me. I pulled out my phone. One bar of signal, useless. As I slid it back into my coat, a voice broke through the quiet. "You're the groom's father, right?" I turned. A tall man in a gray pinstripe suit stood a few feet away, cigar in one hand, a glass of amber bourbon in the other. He had a southern drawl and a face that looked like it had been carved from sandstone. "Weldon Maynor," he said, lifting his glass slightly. "Father of the bride." We shook hands. His grip was firm. He smiled, but there was something thin about it. "Quite a night," I offered. He chuckled. "They said you might try to make a scene tonight." The words hit like cold water. I blinked. "Excuse me?" Weldon shrugged, took a puff from his cigar. "Something about you being unpredictable, that you had strong opinions." I stared at him, the ache in my side from the fall earlier suddenly sharper. "Who told you that?" He sipped his drink. "Lorne, I assume, or maybe her mother, hard to tell. They were on edge about the old man, didn't want drama during the toast." A beat passed. He tilted his head, as if studying me. "Didn't expect you to be so quiet. Frankly, I barely knew you were here." I didn't respond right away. My fingers flexed unconsciously at my sides. Weldon continued, more to himself than me. "You know, I haven't spoken to my old man in over 20 years. Didn't even invite him to my wedding. Some people just don't age into relevance, I guess. There it was, plain as day. I looked out toward the valet lot again, watching a driver pull up in a sleek white Tesla, probably one of the bride's uncles. I'd paid for a portion of tonight's event, not that anyone mentioned it. You get too old, too slow, Weldon added, and suddenly you're in the way. I turned back toward him, my voice steady. Or maybe people stop listening before we're done speaking. He raised his brow, smirked, and nodded. Fair point. With that, he stubbed his cigar on the edge of the railing and walked back inside without another word. I stayed behind, letting the silence settle around me. No allies in that ballroom. Not one. Not Delmar. Not Lorne. Certainly not her father. And yet, I didn't feel defeated. Not quite. I reached into my coat, pulling the phone out again. The signal had returned. 2 bars now. I opened the White Pages app. Typed Lowell Desmarais. There it was. A listing in Peoria. Still in Illinois. I didn't hit call. Not yet. I just saved the number to my contacts. Lowell D. The hallway was empty as I stepped back inside. The light was a little too bright. The air smelled of lemon polish and distant perfume. I passed by my table, the one by the restroom. Empty. No one had noticed my absence. No one had saved my seat. Good. I walked a little slower now, but taller, straighter. They'd written me off. Too soon. The engine hummed quietly beneath my hands as I sat alone in the car, parked beneath the flickering lamp outside the hotel. The wedding had ended hours ago, but I hadn't moved. My tie hung loose around my neck, and the cold from the night air crept through the cracked window. I stared at the folded napkin resting on the passenger seat, the one where I'd scribbled a name I hadn't said aloud in over a decade. Lowell Desmarais. I didn't know what I expected from calling him. Maybe a laugh, maybe silence, maybe a dial tone. But I reached for the phone anyway. My finger hovered over the number I'd saved only an hour ago. Then, I pressed it. 1 ring, 2, 3. Hello? That voice, aged but unmistakable. I froze. Harlan? I closed my eyes. Yeah, it's me. A pause. It's been 15 years, he said. His tone wasn't cold, just careful. I know, I replied. But something's come up. Something important. Another pause. Longer this time. Then he sighed. Is this about her? My heart kicked in my chest. So you do remember. I never forgot. We arranged to meet the next morning. Neither of us said much else. The call ended, not with goodbyes, but with silence. I let the phone drop into the cup holder and gripped the steering wheel. The weight of the past was suddenly in the car with me, sitting in the passenger seat. The road home was empty. The streetlights passed in slow, golden blurs. My mind drifted backward. Lowell and I, 20 years younger, shouting across sawdust-stained floors in the cabinet shop. We'd built that business from nothing. There were days we ate from vending machines, nights we slept on the shop floor. We'd been brothers in everything but blood, until we weren't. We fought about growth, about risk. I'd wanted to sell part of the business to fund Delmar's education and start saving for Evelyn's health needs. Lowell wanted to double down, open a second location. I left. He called it betrayal. I called it survival. Some wounds never scab over, but the memory that struck me now was different. A trade show in Milwaukee. Must have been just after Delmar's high school graduation. We were both tired, both nursing cheap beers. And she was there, Lorne, back then, just a bright-eyed marketing rep with sharp heels and sharper instincts. Lowell met her first. They dated briefly. Nothing serious, he said. But something about the way he looked at her back then, it lingered in my memory like the scent of burnt oak. I had nearly forgotten, until he said, "Is this about her?" My house welcomed me with silence. I stepped into the dark hallway, shoes dragging over the old runner Evelyn picked out 20 years ago. The air was cool, the kind that clings to a man's bones. I bypassed the bedroom and went straight to the study. The light above the desk buzzed faintly as I flicked it on. Dust floated like ash in the beam. I pulled down an old folder from the bookshelf. Cybert Demarais, Client Projects 1999-2004. Inside were photos of our earliest work, built-in shelving, farmhouse tables, kitchens, men with calloused hands and proud smiles. And in one photo, taken at that trade show, there she was, Lorne, just off-center, half turned toward the camera. She wasn't looking at us, she was looking past us, like she already knew where she was going. It wasn't a mistake, it wasn't coincidence. She had been close to both of us, and now she was married to my son. I stared at the photo, heart pounding. Why had she inserted herself into Delmar's life? After Lowell, after me. Was this revenge, or something bigger? She didn't just yank my chair tonight. She yanked control, from Lowell, from me, and maybe from Delmar, too. The woman I'd thought cruel was actually strategic. The humiliation at the wedding wasn't just disrespect. It was premeditated erasure. She didn't want me to disappear quietly. She wanted to bury me. I closed the folder and leaned back in the chair, rubbing my temples. For years, I'd tried to stay out of Delmar's business. I gave space. I bit my tongue. I convinced myself that distance was respect. Now I saw the truth. I hadn't been absent. I'd been pushed out, 1 inch at a time. The first glow of dawn seeped through the blinds. My bones ached, but my mind had settled into a strange clarity. I pulled out a spiral-bound notebook and wrote down 3 things in thick, deliberate strokes. Meet with Lowell. Request full financials from Delmar. Investigate the family trust. Start with the law office Evelyn used. I closed the notebook and placed it neatly beside the photo folder. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like a bystander. I turned off the lamp. If I'm going to take my life back, I whispered into the silence, I can't do it alone. The father of the bride had a warning. The bell above the diner door jingled just as I was stirring cream into my coffee. I didn't look up right away. Cedar Grove was a small town, and this place, the Silver Fork, was the kind of joint where everybody knew you by how you liked your eggs. I figured it was just another regular stopping in for their morning fix. But then someone slid into the booth across from me, uninvited and heavy with intent. You and I need to talk, now. I looked up, blinking against the sunlight spilling through the window behind him. Weldon Maynor, the father of the bride. He looked different in the daylight, older, less lacquered than the man I'd seen standing proud beside his daughter at the altar. His eyes were shadowed, his cheeks rough with stubble. There was a tremor in his hand as he reached for the sugar packets. You got a moment, Cybert? He asked, though he'd already made himself comfortable. I nodded slowly. Guess I do. He leaned in, elbows on the table like a man unburdening a secret. I caught your toast the other night. Quiet, classy, almost too classy, considering. I didn't bite. I just sipped the coffee and waited. He exhaled like he'd been holding the words in for days. Lorne's not who she says she is. I tilted my head slightly. Go on. I didn't have the guts to stop that wedding, he said, eyes dropping to his hands. But I tried. A few weeks ago, I told Delmar he didn't know her, that she calculates things, plans. He brushed me off, said I was bitter. And are you? I asked quietly. Weldon chuckled, but there was no humor in it. More like broke. He stirred his coffee with a knife. At the rehearsal dinner, she handed me a contract, said she'd take care of the debt hanging over me, medical bills, back taxes. All I had to do was sign. Just a trust reallocation, she said, minor paperwork. And if I didn't, she made it clear I wouldn't see her again, or my grandkids, if there were ever any. His jaw tightened, so I signed. I leaned back, the sound of a distant coffee pot gurgling behind the counter filling the silence. I thought that envelope was just a letter, I murmured, remembering the moment she handed it to him near the wine table. He shook his head. Nope. That was the day she bought my silence. He looked up at me, eyes red-rimmed. But watching you fall, watching them pretend you didn't exist, I couldn't stomach it. I knew then, if she was doing this to you, too, it wasn't just me. It's a pattern. I let the words hang there. Weldon Maynor, flawed, maybe selfish, Wasn't the man I expected to find sitting across from me at sunrise. But sometimes it's the broken ones who see clearly, having lived long enough with the consequences of looking away. He reached into his coat and pulled out a folder, slid it across the table. "Photocopies," he said, "of what I signed. It's not just my assets she's after. She's lining herself up around Delmar's business, too. That secondary beneficiary clause, it's tied to an account Delmar doesn't even know she touched." I opened the folder. Scanning the dense print and highlighted sections, her name was there, in bold ink, in all the right places. We both sat in silence. Weldon finally said, "I don't know how to fix it. I was too weak. But if she's going after your estate too, I'd rather stand next to you than behind her." I nodded, stood up, and dropped a 10 on the table. My appetite was gone. "We were both too quiet," I said. He gave a slow, sad smile. "You're not the only father waking up late." Outside, the air was cool against my face. I stood on the sidewalk a moment, folder tucked beneath my arm, and called Lowell. "You were right," I said, once he picked up. "She's been at this a while." Lowell didn't ask for details. He just said, "Then let's talk now." The bench by the Cedar Grove River hadn't changed much in 15 years. The paint was chipped, the slats warped from too many harsh winters, but it held its ground. I sat down slowly, the late afternoon sun slanting through the sycamores, casting long shadows on the water. Ducks floated aimlessly, quacking now and then, unaware of the weight I carried in my chest. I gripped the strap of the canvas folder Weldon had given me and stared out across the river. The silence around me buzzed louder than the reception music from 2 nights ago. This wasn't just about humiliation anymore, it was something older, deeper. I heard footsteps before I saw him. "Thought you'd be earlier," I said without turning. Lowell Desmarais stepped into view, older than I remembered, his hair now a washed-out gray, beard scruffier, eyes tired, but still sharp. "I should have come back sooner," he said quietly. We didn't shake hands. There was no need. Some friendships don't pick up where they left off. They limp back, dragging old wounds with them. He sat down beside me and adjusted the strap of his worn leather backpack. "You look the same," he said. "Stubborn, I mean." I half smiled. "And you look like hell." He let out a dry chuckle. "Yeah, well, hell's got better lighting." We sat in silence for a while, watching the ducks and the occasional breeze stir the water. Then he spoke, his voice lower than before. "She nearly destroyed me, Harlan." I turned my head toward him. "You mean Lorne?" He nodded, jaw tightening. "She wasn't going by Hanson back then. Different last name, different story." "What happened?" He leaned back and sighed. "You remember after Ellie died, how I disappeared for a while?" I nodded. His wife, cancer. The kind of grief that doesn't show up to funerals. It burrows into bones. "That's when I met her," he said. "Lorne. She came to one of those trade shows in Chicago. Said she was doing design consulting for boutique remodelers. Charming, smart, soft-spoken. Said all the right things." He paused, rubbed a hand over his face. "She started spending time with us, with my daughter. Made herself useful, helping with the books. Even organizing the office, for the first time since Ellie passed. I felt seen." I could hear it in his voice. That slow unraveling men don't notice until it's too late. "We got engaged," he said. "Quick, I wasn't thinking straight. My daughter, Molly, she hated it." Said Lorne was hiding something. He reached into his backpack, pulled out an old envelope. Inside were photocopies, bank statements, invoices, applications. "Molly found these," he said, spreading them out on the bench between us. "Lorne opened a line of credit in our business name, bought furniture, jewelry, even a damn spa weekend." My throat tightened. I looked closer. The handwriting, Lorne's cursive, tidy and cold, was unmistakable. When I confronted her, Lowell continued, she turned it all around, accused me of emotional manipulation, said I was trying to control her, said Molly was jealous. He looked away, voice cracked. I believed her. For a minute. What happened then? I asked. I left the house for 2 days, he said. Told them I needed time. When I came back, she was gone. So was the money. The breeze carried the sound of leaves rustling above us. Neither of us spoke. The folder sat between us like a gravestone. She did it to me, Harlan, and now she's doing it again, to your son. I stared down at the photocopies. Dates, vendors, signature lines, and then something clicked. These invoice numbers, I murmured, pointing to the corner. She used similar numbering in that folder Weldon gave me. Lowell nodded. She recycles her scams, because no one compares notes. I took a deep breath. Why didn't you come to me back then? He looked at me, shame and regret pooling in his eyes. Because I thought I'd look like a fool, and because I was one. I thought I was protecting my daughter, but I was protecting my pride. The late daylight turned golden around us. I folded the papers carefully, returned them to the envelope, then handed them back. I never thought Delmar would fall for someone like her, I said, but I never thought she'd show up again in our lives either. Lowell slung his bag over his shoulder. She doesn't let go easy. And she doesn't leave without taking something. I stood. Then let's make sure she doesn't get what she came for. He nodded once, firm. There's someone else you need to meet, he said. She knew Lorne, too, and she's scared. Then we go together. We turned from the river, walking slowly. Not like two old men, but like survivors of something only just beginning to make sense. The drive out to the edge of Cedar Grove was quiet. Lowell hadn't said much after we left town, and I didn't push him. He kept both hands tight on the wheel, eyes fixed ahead, like he was steering us through something heavier than traffic. We pulled into a gravel driveway just as the last of the sun slipped behind the trees. The house looked small, modest, but neat, like someone lived quietly and meant to keep it that way. A yellow porch light flickered as a woman opened the door before we even knocked. She was in her late 60s, short gray hair pulled back, a shawl draped over her shoulders. Her voice was wary. You really brought him? Lowell gave a tired smile. You said it was time. Her eyes settled on me, sharp, curious, then resigned. Come in. Her name was Evelyn Sharp, a former neighbor of Lowell's from years back. We stepped into a house filled with clutter and paperbacks, the smell of chamomile and something baked long ago still clinging to the corners. I'll make tea, she said, moving toward the kitchen. Her hands shook as she filled the kettle, eyes darting toward the window every few minutes. Lowell and I sat on a faded couch, springs protesting under our weight. I didn't say anything. I waited. She came back with 3 mismatched cups, setting them down on coasters that looked older than my son. She sat opposite us, pulling her shawl tighter. I don't know what good this does now, she said. Lowell leaned forward. You were there, Evelyn. You saw things. You heard things. He needs to know. She looked at me, tired and sad. That summer, everything changed. Lorne came into your friend's life like a breeze through a broken window, soft at first. Then everything got cold. I said nothing. Just let her speak. I saw her once, yelling at Lowell's daughter, screaming about money, control, privacy. It was strange, so unlike the cheerful girl she played in public. She paused, eyes narrowing, and I overheard her on the phone once, said she needed access to his accounts before the wedding. Did you say anything back then? I asked. She gave a bitter smile. I got a check in the mail, $5,000. Thanks for being kind during a stressful time, it said. I took it. I was broke. I told myself it was innocent. Lowell turned away, his jaw tight. She wasn't who she said she was, Evelyn continued, and Lowell wasn't the first. I sat up straighter. What do you mean? There was a man before, she said quietly. Peter Langston. Same town, different neighborhood. He and Lorne were engaged a couple of years before she met Lowell. What happened to him? She set her tea down. He died. Heart attack, they said. But he was young, maybe mid-40s, healthy, no history of anything. And you think, I don't know what to think, she said. All I know is she cried at his funeral and booked a cruise the week after. First class. Alone. My fingers curled around the cup, not from the heat, but from the tight pull in my chest. And you didn't speak up? Evelyn's face went pale. She came to my house one night, told me she appreciated my silence, said people who stirred the past had a way of becoming part of it. Lowell looked as if he might be sick. I asked, "You think she's capable of—" "She's capable of anything if it gets her what she wants," Evelyn said. "She gets close to men who are grieving. Inserts herself, controls finances, then moves on." "She's doing it again," I muttered. To my son. Evelyn leaned forward. "Then don't let her. You have to act. You and him." She nodded at Lowell. "You both let her in, but she hasn't finished yet." There was a silence in the room, heavy like humidity before a storm. Then she said, "There's someone else." Lowell sat up. "Who?" She always talked to this girl, younger, like a personal assistant. But more than that, I think her name was Whitney. I froze. That name. She said, "Whitney always cleans up after me," like she meant it literally. My heart began to race. If Whitney was still in the picture, she could be the thread we needed to pull. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out my phone. "I know someone who might help us find her," I said. "He's discreet." I sent a text to Eugene Holloway, Delmar's old classmate who'd become a bit of a digital bloodhound. "Need a name. Whitney. Connected to Lauren Hansen, maybe alias, quiet search, urgent." Evelyn touched my hand lightly. "You're not just fighting for your son, Mr. Seibert. You're fighting for all the men she's used." Lowell looked over at me. His eyes weren't angry anymore. They were determined. We weren't just fathers now. We were witnesses, and we weren't going to be silent anymore. Morning light crept through the blinds. But it hadn't brought me sleep. The coffee in my mug had gone cold hours ago. Yet I kept refilling it as if heat might burn away the unease that sat heavy on my chest. By 7, I gave up pretending. I picked up the phone and called Eugene. He answered on the second ring, voice groggy but alert. "Couldn't wait." "Huh?" "No," I admitted. "I need to know who she is." An hour later, I sat in his cluttered shop, surrounded by shelves stacked with half-repaired radios, laptops, and the faint smell of soldering iron. Eugene hunched over his computer like a man born to live in the glow of a screen. His fingers tapped steadily, pulling threads from the tangle of data Evelyn Sharp had given us. "She's slippery," he muttered. "This Whitney doesn't want to be found. Fake emails, deleted profiles, dead phone numbers." "Keep digging," I told him. He did. 20 minutes later, the name appeared, Whitney Lang. The word Lang hit me like a slap. Peter Langston, the man Evelyn said had died after trying to expose Lorne. Couldn't be coincidence. My hands tightened on the cane resting across my knees. "She's at a startup incubator downtown," Eugene said. "Place called Vivid Nest. And guess who else is renting space there?" I already knew the answer. Delmar. We parked across from Vivid Nest just before lunch. Through the glass doors, I saw bright murals on the walls and clusters of young professionals with laptops, brimming with the kind of hope that used to belong to me. Then she appeared, Whitney, confident, stylish. She swept inside like she owned the place, chatting with the front desk, touching people on the arm, laughing, every move polished, calculated. "She's not some assistant," Eugene whispered. "She's in charge of something." I couldn't look away. My son trusted this woman. I could see it already in the way she carried herself, and I hated that I knew the playbook. Lorne had written it years ago. Eugene leaned close. "I can plant a bug in the shared kitchen. Nobody looks twice at a coffee maker." "Do it," I said. My voice was low, tight. "I need more than suspicion." The next afternoon, Eugene showed up at my house with a flash drive in his hand. He plugged it into my old desktop, and together we listened to the tinny recording. Whitney's voice came clear enough. "He trusts me now. The next signature is his." I gripped the edge of the desk. "She's got him signing things," Eugene explained. He clicked open a folder, revealing PDFs of invoices. See this? Payment authorized by D. Cybert to Lang Consulting. She set up her own shell. I forced myself to breathe evenly. My son's name on those documents looked like a betrayal, but I knew better. He was being played, just like Lowell, just like Weldon, just like me. She's using him, I said. The words came out more like a growl, the way she's always done. That night, I went to Delmar's apartment. I'd rehearsed the words on the drive over. I would tell him everything, show him the folder, make him listen. But when the door opened, he stood there in a suit, hair slicked back, looking 10 years younger from the glow of ambition. Whitney stood at his side, dressed for dinner, her arm looped through his. "Pop," he said quickly, glancing at his watch. "We'll catch up Sunday." "Okay. I'm exhausted." I looked at him, at her, at the way she leaned into him like she already owned his life. My chest tightened. "All right," I managed. "Sunday." She smiled at me, sweet and empty, a smile I'd seen before. I tightened my grip on my cane to keep my hand from shaking. Back home, I sat alone in the den with the lights off. The house creaked in the wind, the same way it always did when Evelyn was alive and I used to wait up for her to come home. The phone rang. Eugene. "If we can catch her pressuring him," he said, "we'll have proof, not just suspicion, evidence." "How?" I asked. "That old laptop your son borrows from me sometimes. I can rig it, mic, tracker, everything." I closed my eyes. For a moment, doubt pressed hard against my ribs. Was I crossing a line? Or had Lauren already crossed it years ago, and I'd been too blind to stop her? I opened my eyes and spoke steady. "Do it. I won't lose him too." Thunder cracked outside just as Eugene promised he'd set it up tonight. I sat back, staring at the storm, and whispered to the dark, "If she thinks I'm the same man she pulled a chair from, she's about to learn I've been standing longer than she thought." The kitchen was dark except for the small glow from Eugene's laptop. He slid it across the table toward me, like a dealer laying down a final hand. My hands hesitated before touching it. The machine looked ordinary, just another piece of plastic and wires, but I knew what it held. "Ready?" Eugene asked softly. A nod was all I could give. The audio clicked on, faint at first, then sharp and unmistakable. Whitney's voice carried a calm confidence, the kind you'd expect from a woman who never feared being caught. "The board will only back you if the shares are in your name, not your father's. This is how we win." Silence. Then Delmar's voice, low, steady, almost bored. "I know. I'll handle him. I always do." The words tore into me deeper than the laughter at the wedding or the chair pulled from under me. That was cruelty. This was betrayal. My hand curled into a fist on the table. Eugene leaned back, eyes watching me with quiet worry. "We've got them. Harlan. This is the proof." But I shook my head slowly. He wasn't tricked. Eugene, he chose this. The bitterness rolled heavy in my chest. I thought of the nights I stayed up building proposals for his first job interviews, the times I bailed him out when his business ideas collapsed before they could stand. My son, my only son, agreeing to carve me out like dead wood. Eugene placed a hand on my shoulder. "Don't let it eat you alive. We'll find a way." I stared at the dark window, the reflection of my own tired face looking back at me. I need to see it, with my own eyes. That chance came quicker than I expected. My phone buzzed just after sunset. A text from Delmar. "Whitney's hosting dinner at our place. Come if you want." No apology, no explanation, just an invitation. When I arrived, their backyard glowed with string lights and polished patio furniture. The table was set as if for a magazine shoot, the smell of roasted vegetables and garlic bread in the air, untouched. Whitney moved among the chairs with ease, her laugh carrying like a practiced melody. Delmar spotted me. "Dad, you made it." His smile was wide, false, rehearsed. I didn't sit. My cane grounded me, steadying my legs as I scanned the stage they'd built. Whitney glided over, glass of wine in hand. We want to talk about your estate planning. Mr. Seibert, you're not getting younger. Her words were silk-wrapped knives. I took a breath, placed the laptop on the table. The clink echoed too loud for such a calm gesture. Before we talk about wills, I said, maybe we listen to something. I pressed play. Whitney's voice again, smooth and commanding. The board will only back you if the shares are in your name, not your father's. This is how we win. Then Delmar's. I know. I'll handle him. I always do. The sound filled the night, louder than the hum of the lights, louder than the pulse in my ears. Whitney's smile faltered. Delmar's face drained of color. That's private, he snapped, lunging for the laptop. I pulled it back. You made it my business the moment you put a knife in my back. Guests nearby had gone quiet. Eugene lingered at the edge of the yard, and I caught sight of Weldon Maynor leaning against the fence, his smirk finally gone. Even Edward, the local pastor, stood frozen with a plate in his hand. Delmar's voice rose, sharp and angry. You never trusted me, Dad. That's why I had to do it this way. You never let me stand on my own. The words didn't sound like strength. They sounded like excuses. The gathering unraveled after that. Guests drifted off with awkward goodbyes, the food still untouched. Delmar slammed a door somewhere inside. Whitney vanished into the night like smoke. Eugene drove me home in silence, the hum of his old truck steady beneath us. My eyes stayed fixed on the passing streetlights. It was never about the company, I said finally, my voice raw. It was about the lie. Eugene glanced at me. What will you do now? I turned my gaze to the folder waiting on my desk at home. One Evelyn had hidden away years ago. The label burned in my mind. Delmar, custody, 1996. It's not over, I whispered. If I go down, I'm not going quietly. Maybe this had started long before Whitney, long before Lorne. Maybe the seeds of betrayal had been planted decades ago, and now it was time to dig them up. The attic smelled of dust and cedar, a scent that carried me back decades. My knees cracked as I lowered myself onto the floorboards, the weak light from a dangling bulb throwing shadows across old boxes stacked in crooked piles. There it was, an envelope thick with papers, the words scrawled in my late wife's hand, Delmar, custody, 1996. My fingers trembled as I opened it. Inside, I found letters, reports, petitions. Evelyn's voice reached across time, quiet but urgent. I'm scared of what he's becoming under Harlan's pressure to be perfect. I froze, the weight of those words settling heavier than the box itself. I had believed we were united, that we always faced Delmar's troubles as one. But she had carried this fear alone. A counselor's report followed, phrases underlined, blunt and cold. Manipulative tendencies, difficulty with accountability. Even at 16, my son had been flagged. Evelyn had seen it, and she had tried to protect us. She even drafted a petition for sole custody. I swallowed hard, blinking at the tear-stained edges of the paper. She never filed it. Or maybe she tried, and I was too blind to see. I leaned back against a trunk, staring at the rafters. She hadn't trusted me with her deepest fear, and that hurt more than anything Delmar had done last week. Driving to the courthouse felt like peeling back layers of old scars. The building hadn't changed in 30 years. Same beige stone, same creaky steps, same echo of shuffling papers inside. The clerk, a woman younger than my grandson, pulled up the archived records with a kind of distant curiosity. There it was. Custody petition. Seibert Voy. Seibert. 1996. Sealed. But with enough notes to make my throat tighten. Evelyn had filed, then withdrawn. And another name popped up in the paperwork. Weldon Maynor, the father of the bride. My mirror at the wedding, my rival in silence. Why would he be there? I read further. Weldon had vouched for Delmar, argued he was a good boy with potential. My jaw set. While Evelyn fought her private war, he had undercut her. Was it arrogance, ignorance, or something worse? That evening, I drove to Weldon's porch. His house sagged a little, wood warped from Midwest winters. He was on the steps with a drink in hand. No bourbon this time, just sweet tea, sweating in the glass. His eyes narrowed as I approached. "I found your name in my son's custody file," I said, keeping my tone even. His lips pressed tight. Then he sighed, rubbing his temples. "She came to me. Harlan, Evelyn, said she was scared. I told her she was overreacting. I thought you were too hard on the boy. God help me. I thought I was doing you a favor." I wanted to lash out, but the weight of his words sagged between us. He stood, shuffled inside, and returned with a weathered envelope. He held it out. "She left this with me. Told me to give it to you if Delmar ever turned against you." I opened it there, the porch light buzzing overhead. Evelyn's handwriting, shaky but determined. "Trust yourself more than I did. Protect what we built. If Delmar turns cruel, it is not your failure. It is his choice." The lump in my throat nearly choked me. For years I had carried the guilt of being too strict, too distant. But here was Evelyn telling me she had doubted herself. Not me. She had wanted me to stand taller, not step back home. I spread the papers across my study desk, the attic folder, Evelyn's second letter, the courthouse notes. It was as if she had been leaving me breadcrumbs all along, waiting for the day I would need them, and that day was now. I pulled out my laptop. My hands steadied as I began drafting a statement, an intent to revise my estate, restructure the trust, and lock down every asset Delmar thought he could reach. Every keystroke felt like Evelyn guiding my hand, reminding me of the life we had built together brick by brick, sacrifice by sacrifice. "They betrayed my trust," I whispered into the silence, but not my memory, and not my voice. The cursor blinked at the end of the page when my phone buzzed on the desk. A new notification. Notice of petition. Delmar Seibert. Emergency guardianship claim. Grounds. Mental incompetence. My chest tightened, not from fear, but from fury. He wasn't waiting for me to die. He wanted me erased now. I closed the laptop slowly. Like setting down a weapon I would soon need again. He wants to erase me before I can speak, but I'm not finished speaking yet. The knock at the door came just as the clock struck 7:12, too early for a neighbor, too purposeful to be chance. I opened it to find a young man in a blazer, expression neutral, handing me an envelope with the practiced tone of someone who'd rehearsed it dozens of times. "Mr. Seibert, you've been served." The door closed softly behind him, but the words stayed, heavy as stone. I tore the envelope open at the kitchen counter, my coffee untouched and cooling. Petition for guardianship. Filed by my son, Delmar Seibert. The language was clinical, precise. "Mr. Seibert has demonstrated signs of diminished capacity. He is no longer capable of managing his estate or legacy." I read it twice. The tremor in my hands wasn't fear. It was fury. My own son wanted to erase me while I was still breathing, not kill me. No, worse. He wanted me silent, signed away, dismissed like an outdated contract. "So this," I whispered into the still kitchen air, "is what my son has become, a man who erases people alive." By mid-morning, I was in the law office of George Wallace. He was young, sharp-suited, and deliberate with every word. His father had been the lawyer back in 1996 who pushed against Evelyn's petition for custody. "I remember your wife," George said gently, tapping a pen on his desk. "She came here once. My father told her the system wouldn't side with her. He said she looked defeated when she walked out. He never mentioned it again." I slid Evelyn's old letter across the table, the one Weldon had given me. She trusted the system, and it failed her. I won't repeat that mistake. George read it carefully, jaw tightening. "Then we won't just defend your competence. We'll defend your name. That petition isn't just an insult. It's an attack on everything you've built." For the first time since dawn, I felt vindicated. This wasn't about senility. It was about betrayal dressed in legal ink. Back home, my study became a war room. Files lay scattered across the desk. Bank statements, Evelyn's notes, faded photographs. I opened a fresh notebook, writing down a timeline of every manipulation, every slight, every insult since the wedding. Then I set up my old camcorder, red light blinking. I looked into the lens and began recording. To whoever needs to see this, I am of sound mind, and I will not be erased. The words tumbled out. Steadier than I expected. I spoke of Evelyn, of Fern, of Maisie. I spoke of the love that once held this family together, and then my voice cracked. Delmar was never meant to carry this burden, but he chose to become it, and I won't let him bury me to hide his sins. When the tape clicked off, I sat in silence, letting the ache in my chest settle into something harder, sharper, resolve. That evening, I carried a peach pie to Fern's house. She opened the door, smiling with that familiar warmth, but her eyes darkened when she saw my face. They're trying to take everything from me, Fern. She set the pie on the counter and took my hands. For a long time she said nothing. Then, softly, Harlan, I need to tell you something. Her voice trembled. Evelyn came to me in '96. She told me she was scared of your blind spots with Delmar. She begged me not to interfere, made me promise to stay silent. The words hit harder than the petition that morning. Evelyn had known, and Fern, faithful, loyal Fern, had carried that secret all these years. She pulled a small envelope from a drawer and handed it to me. Evelyn gave me this too, said it was only for you, if Delmar ever turned on you. My fingers shook as I opened it. Inside was a faded Polaroid of Evelyn holding a young Delmar, her face solemn, her eyes almost warning me through time. A note slipped free. If he ever turns on his father, stop him. The weight of her foresight nearly crushed me, and yet, it steadied me too. The next morning, I stood in front of the mirror, fastening my father's old tie clip to my collar. The courthouse waited, and with it, the judgment of strangers. But I would walk in not as a man diminished, but as the man Evelyn had always trusted I could be. Outside, the air was cool, steadying. As I approached the courthouse steps, I saw Maisie waiting. She looked small against the wide stone facade, but when she saw me, she ran forward and hugged me fiercely. I want to sit inside, she said, her voice firm. I want to hear everything. My throat tightened, but I nodded, then let them all hear. And together, we walked into the storm. The courthouse smelled faintly of varnish and old paper, a place where stories of families had been picked apart for generations, sitting there in a pressed suit that had seen fewer weddings than funerals. I felt no tremor in my hands. George Wallace sat beside me, his notes stacked neatly. Across the aisle, Delmar leaned back, confident, while Lorne whispered into his ear with a smile that carried no warmth. When the judge entered, the room hushed. George rose first, his voice even and respectful. This is not a case about decline. It is a case about dignity. I breathed deeply. This wasn't about holding on to my pride. It was about protecting what Evelyn and I had built, what Maisie deserved to inherit without poison. Legacy, true legacy, wasn't measured in accounts or titles, but in how firmly one stood when others tried to erase them. Delmar spoke next. His words were smooth, rehearsed. He painted pictures of missed appointments, of a forgotten grocery list, of a man he described as confused and at risk. He is no longer capable of managing his estate or his legacy, my own son said, each word slicing deeper than any fall from a chair ever could. Lorne followed, her voice breaking at convenient places, tears slipping down without smudging her makeup. We only wanted to protect him from himself, she whispered. George waited, patient, then rose. His questions came sharp. Why had these concerns never been raised before the wedding? Why were their financial documents shifting in Delmar's favor just weeks after Lorne entered his life? Their story frayed at the edges under the weight of logic. I sat silent, my gaze steady. Around me, the courtroom wavered, half nodding in sympathy with Delmar, others frowning at the contradictions. I felt the isolation, but it didn't weaken me. If anything, it clarified the battlefield. Then came Eugene. He walked up with the quiet confidence of a man carrying truth. From his pocket, he produced a small USB drive. George slotted it into the court's monitor system. The screen flickered. Sound filling the room. Lorne's voice. Crisp. Mocking. He won't even notice when the papers hit. Then Delmar's voice. Calm. Certain. He'll be lucky to remember who I am. Gasps broke across the courtroom. The judge slammed his gavel. Lorne's face drained of color. Delmar shifted, trying to mask the panic. I didn't move, my eyes fixed on my son, not with anger, but with the hollow grief of a man who had already lost what mattered most. George's voice cut through the silence. That is not guardianship. That is premeditated control. The illusion shattered. When the judge finally spoke, the room fell still again. His words were deliberate, weighted with experience. Mr. Seibert has presented evaluations, journals, community letters. He has demonstrated clarity. But more than that, he has shown dignity. He paused, then added something unexpected. I lost my mother to a scheme like this. I know the signs when love is used as a tool. He looked directly at me. The petition is denied. No appeal will be granted. Mr. Seibert retains full control of his estate. The gavel came down. The sound was not just a ruling. It was a reckoning. By dusk, I was back on my porch. The sky blazed orange, and Fern sat beside me with 2 glasses of iced tea. She placed one in my hand. You won, she said softly. I shook my head. No, I remembered who I was. Out in the yard, Maisie twirled with a tune Evelyn used to hum in the kitchen. Her laughter carried, soft and free. On the table beside me sat a fresh document, my revised will. Not for Delmar, not for Lorne, for Maisie, but only when she turned 30, old enough to value what could not be stolen. I leaned back, the wood of the chair solid beneath me, the same kind of chair they once yanked away in humiliation. I had built this one again, stronger. The chair they pulled out from under me, I whispered to the evening air. I built it again, and this time, no one can take it. Justice hadn't just been served, it had been reclaimed, my dignity, my legacy, my voice, all intact.